I never imagined I'd see this with my own eyes. There she was, my daughter-in-law, 8 months pregnant, balancing a tray of drinks with a smile that felt forced, moving between tables as if the world hadn't already taken enough from her. I froze in the doorway, unable to speak, unsure if I should confront her or disappear before she noticed me. It wasn't just the sight of her working late nights in this cramped, noisy diner that shocked me. It was the way she carried herself, the quiet tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted nervously every time a customer complained or a coworker joked at her expense. I realized then that I didn't fully know her life, not really, and perhaps I had never tried to. Weeks before, she had insisted she didn't need help, that she could manage on her own. My son had been too busy with work to notice, too trusting, too blinded by his own stress to see the strain she was under. I had always thought she was sheltered, that our family's support was enough. But standing here, watching her wipe down the same sticky table for the third time that evening, I wondered if I had been naive. Something in the way she laughed at a customer's joke, the slight tremor in her hands, the careful way she avoided eye contact with the manager. It all clicked into place. She wasn't just tired. She was trapped in a cycle of obligation and fear, doing what she thought she had to, hiding the truth about her struggles. And suddenly, I felt a pang of guilt so sharp it made my chest ache. I had judged her silently, assuming she was reckless or careless, but now I saw a different story unfolding in real time. I took a step closer, debating whether to call out her name, but the words stuck in my throat. Then, almost as if she sensed my presence, she looked up. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and for a brief moment, I thought I could see everything she hadn't said. Every fear, every sacrifice, every quiet plea for understanding. And then she smiled that same careful smile and whispered to a coworker, something so ordinary it almost made me laugh. But it wasn't ordinary at all. I realized I had been looking for a mistake, for a flaw, for something to criticize. But what I found instead was resilience, hidden beneath layers of exhaustion and doubt. And right then, I understood that whatever judgment I had carried, whatever assumptions I had made, were meaningless. She was surviving, and maybe, just maybe, there was more to her story than I had ever imagined. But before I could process it fully, she said something, a single sentence, soft but piercing, that made me step back and question everything I thought I knew about her, about my family, and about the life we all assumed we understood. And in that moment, I knew nothing would ever feel the same again. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Her words hung in the air like a fragile, tremulous truth, one that had the power to shatter the illusions I had carried about our family, about responsibility, and about the quiet struggles people endure behind closed doors. I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want to worry anyone, she said, her voice barely audible over the hum of the diner, yet somehow cutting through every The realization hit me like a cold wave. She had been silently carrying more than anyone could imagine, not just the physical weight of pregnancy, but the emotional weight of expectations, of pride, of needing to appear strong when every fiber of her being screamed for help. And here, I had been, thinking I understood her life, thinking that my son's love and our family's support were enough. But they weren't. Not when she felt she had no choice but to step into the world on her own, even at the cost of her own comfort, her own health, her own peace of mind. I took a cautious step toward her, unsure how to bridge the gap that suddenly felt enormous. Why didn't you tell us?" I asked, my voice catching in my throat. It was part curiosity, part accusation, part desperate need to understand. She looked up at me, eyes glimmering with exhaustion and something deeper, resolve. "Because," she whispered, "I didn't want you to see me struggle. I wanted to handle it. For all of us." I froze, realizing that everything I had thought about her independence, her decisions, and even her patience had been reframed. This wasn't rebellion or stubbornness or recklessness. This was courage, quiet, uncelebrated courage that manifested in ways I hadn't anticipated. And yet, even as admiration stirred, so did a sharper pang of guilt. We had been blind, not just to her hardships, but to her humanity. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered overhead as she balanced another tray of drinks, her movements precise but measured, like a dancer performing for an audience that would never fully appreciate her skill. I wanted to step forward, offer help, embrace her, but something held me back. There was dignity in the way she bore herself, even amid exhaustion and adversity, and I didn't want to undermine that with pity. We watched each other for a moment longer, neither speaking, until the manager barked from across the room, interrupting our fragile connection. She nodded politely, excused herself, and returned to her duties. I followed her gaze, noticing the delicate curve of her stomach beneath her uniform, the way her hand occasionally brushed against it almost instinctively. Every gesture spoke volumes: sacrifice, protection, selflessness. I left the diner that night with a knot in my chest, replaying every detail over and over. The lights, the smell of coffee and fried food, the low murmur of conversation, all of it etched into my mind. But most of all, her words lingered, a quiet echo of truth. I didn't want anyone to worry. Over the next few days, I tried to process what I had witnessed. I spoke to my son cautiously, careful not to place blame, careful not to reveal the depth of my own shock. I asked questions, listened more than I spoke, and slowly, layer by layer, the story unfolded. It turned out that her family had faced financial struggles long before she married into ours. She had taken on part-time jobs to support herself during college, to save for rent, for bills, for unexpected emergencies. And even now, in our home, where she had a safety net she didn't fully trust, she still felt compelled to contribute, to show resilience in ways that left her weary and stretched thin. She had learned early that independence was survival, that asking for help was dangerous if it risked judgment or disappointment. Understanding this reshaped my perception of her entirely. I realized the subtle ways we, as a family, had unintentionally reinforced her self-reliance. Comments like, "Don't worry, we've got you," had been met with polite smiles, but internalized as reminders that she had to handle things herself. Our love, well-meaning as it was, had sometimes created an unspoken expectation that she carry burdens quietly, that she manage adversity without complaint. I decided to approach her again, this time with a different mindset. When I knocked on her door that evening, I wasn't sure what to say. Words felt insufficient, but she opened it immediately, her tired smile welcoming yet wary. "I need to apologize," I began, voice unsteady. I didn't understand how much you were handling on your own, and I faltered, unsure how to finish. "I want to help." She studied me for a long moment, as if weighing my sincerity. Then she nodded slightly. "I know," she said. "I just didn't want anyone to see me falter, but maybe it's time I let someone in." The next weeks were a slow, careful rebuilding of trust and understanding. We found ways for her to rest, for her to delegate, for her contributions to be acknowledged without expectation. My son adjusted his schedule, carving out more time to support her in concrete ways. We began to see the balance between independence and support, not as opposites, but as complementary, necessary for emotional and physical well-being. One afternoon, as she rested in the sunlit living room, a cup of tea in hand, she looked at me and smiled softly. "I never wanted anyone to see me struggle," she admitted. "But I realize now, letting people in doesn't mean weakness, it means trust." I felt a warmth in my chest, a mix of relief and admiration. Her strength wasn't diminished by her vulnerability, it was defined by it. And in that moment, I understood a profound truth. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, invisible, woven into the everyday acts of surviving, of persisting, of living with integrity when no one is watching. Months later, when she gave birth to our grandson, I watched her cradle him in her arms and marveled at her resilience. The diner, the late nights, the exhaustion, all of it had been a testament to her unwavering commitment to those she loved. And yet, more importantly, she had learned to let us in, to share her burdens, to allow support to coexist with her independence. I realized then that we had all been given a gift, the chance to truly see her, not as someone we assumed we understood, but as a complex, extraordinary human being. And in seeing her fully, we found a deeper connection, a stronger family bond, and a renewed sense of empathy. That night, as I reflected quietly before going to bed, I understood something essential. Life isn't just about the grand gestures of bravery. Sometimes it's about the quiet decisions, the hidden sacrifices, and the courage to let someone in when all you've known is self-reliance. And for her, for all of us, that courage changed everything. Because in witnessing her struggle and in choosing to support her rather than judge her, we discovered a deeper truth about love, resilience, and family. It wasn't the diner, or the work, or the exhaustion that defined her. It was her unwavering heart and her quiet insistence on living with dignity. And that, I realized, was far more powerful than anything I had ever imagined.